Call to order the special commission meeting. If you will please stand for prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, any public comments? Not being any. Randy, I'll turn it over to you, the consideration of auditor selection.
Okay, first I'd like to thank those who participated in the process that got us here tonight. Of course, the commission selecting a very active and engaged group of citizens to be appointed to an auditor selection committee. Appreciate the leadership provided by Commissioner McGahee by chairing that committee as approved by the board. They have met and helped us develop the request for qualifications and proposals from interested auditing firms. Those were advertised, and we received, I think it was 6 inquiries, 4, if I remember correctly, 4 formal proposals. Yes, that's correct. And the city opened those, reviewed them, did presented those or distributed those to members of the committee. They met on February 21st to evaluate and rank the proposals and make a recommendation to the city commission. And you have that in your agenda information. And that was to follow the committee's rankings of the firms to award a contract for professional auditing services for the fiscal year ended September 30, 2019. And they also gave proposals for the 2 subsequent fiscal years for 20 and 21. You have a recommended motion, and that's to follow the committee's rankings of the firms to award a contract for the professional auditing services for the fiscal years I just noted. Of course, that contract would have to be developed, reviewed by the city attorney, and formalized in whatever manner the attorney recommends going forward, so that we can get this auditing firm engaged. That's the reason we called to ask for action at this meeting, so we can move that process along as quickly as possible to meet the deadline of having our audit process for that fiscal year completed by June 30th of this year. Be glad to answer any questions, but that is the recommendation. You have all of the ranking information, and I'll be glad again answer any questions. Of course, Sherry Howell's here, our finance director, to answer any questions you may have. I'll defer to the chair of the committee for any comments that she would like to make with regard to the recommendation. You see, we broke up the weighted criteria that was established for ranking these proposals. And I think there's 5 different categories that total up to 100%. And you see how the rankings came out from each of the vendors or providers that proposed. I have some other comments regarding the auditing process at the appropriate time. I'd like to share those to update the commission on our preparations for the auditing process and so forth, and some of the goals we're pursuing at the staff level to be prepared for the audit. So whenever you want to inject those.
Randy, can you just go over the actual breakdown, of how that 100% was broken down and what those qualifications
For the
were?
record, and for those that
Yes,
do not have a copy of it in the audience, the first item was ability of the bidder to fulfill the contract and specifications. That's 35% of the weight of the evaluation. Prior business experience with the bidder and other governmental agencies was 30%, so those two comprise 65%. Price cost that they quoted was 25% of the weight. Responsiveness to specifications and conditions set forth in the request for proposals, 5%, and value-added services, an additional 5% for a total of 100%.
Right, and I'd like to publicly thank, I know that the chair on behalf of the commission was Melanie McGahey, but we also had those on the selection committee, and they were Mark Dietz, Pepe Lopez, Jeff Smith, and Elaine Wood. And I would like to publicly thank them for their efforts and the time that they took to go through this process with the city. We really appreciate their input and their commitment to the town.
In that same vein, Mayor, if I could point out, I participated in their meetings and listened to the discussion. We forwarded to the commission, and it is available for any interested party, the audio of that meeting, and I hope you had an opportunity to listen to it. It should give you great warm feeling or good feelings that it was a healthy discussion. It was really, I thought, an excellent evaluation of the proposals. And from a staff level, having had a number of years of obviously going through picking auditors and working with auditors, I was very pleased with the ranking that they came out with. If I was ranking them, I would have picked in the same order they did, based on what they received.
Okay. Commissioner McGahey, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
No, I think I.
All right, the request for proposals for the professional auditing services came in, and the number one ranked auditing firm was Malden and Jenkins. They received a score of 97.8%. So the recommended motion is to follow the committee's rankings of the firms and award the contract for professional auditing services for fiscal year ended September 30th, 2019, and fiscal years ending September 30th, 2020 and 2021.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion, a second. Any comments? Any public comments? Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so Randy, you will go through with the process of notifying them and letting them know.
Yes, we'll do that, and as well as the other firms of the recommendation and the action. And we will have them prepare or submit a proposed contract directly to us for the city attorney's reviewed as to form and compliance with all the requirements.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, you're welcome.
Gary, did you have any comments to add, sir?
No, sir. Thank you.
With regard to the city attorney, I appreciate his efforts to bring to our attention this new requirement. And for the public's input, this is the first year that Clewiston has used an auditor selection committee. This was a requirement that was placed upon communities by the legislature, that they have this process, and I appreciate the attorney bringing it to our attention and bringing forward and making sure we followed all the guidelines in putting together our requests for qualifications and proposals.
Okay, and as we look at this year, Randy, I know that preparing for new auditor and also for our budget workshops, are there any updates that you'd like to let us know about?
Yes, I am very pleased to bring to the committee's attention that due to the concerted effort by our finance director, we're going to be in the best position. That's no criticism of any past efforts. The best position that in recent times, at least, in terms of being prepared for the auditing firm when they ask for information that they have to complete the audit. I can't say enough about the efforts that Sherry's put forward. She's really worked, literally burning the late night oil and weekends to get us in this position. It was a goal of mine when I came that we improve upon our financial system, particularly addressing concerns that were earmarked in the audit, and also timely reporting to the commission of our financial position and our condition on a regular basis. We'll be presenting monthly statements that will be given to the board that will give you an unaudited look, a snapshot of our financials, a month in arrears. We will do on some regular basis a summary PowerPoint presentation on the key bullets from that, such as cash and on hand, things of that nature. She has completed it for the general fund, and we'll be wrapping up the parts for the enterprise funds to follow. I would like her to make any comments she would. I did warn her I was going to do this tonight because she just informed me of this today, that she has achieved this level of compliance. This is similar to the type of reporting that I've been accustomed to being made to local government bodies by the finance director ongoing, and I just couldn't be happier about her achieving the degree of success she already has. And she will we're working on getting staffing support filled out for her department so that she will be able to delegate some of the duties that she has traditionally absorbed to other members of her department. And if she wants to comment on that, I'd also give her that opportunity. So come up, if that's permissible, since it is related to the auditor process.
Well, Sherry Howell Finance, I would just be very happy when I have some more staff support, and I am very happy that we do have something positive to report to you guys. So
Thank you. Thank you so
I am
much.
very happy to hear this.
Yes.
You know, what I put on my list of goals was budget and finance. So this makes me happy that before we even got to that topic, to hear this news. So
Yes, thank you, Sierra, for your dedication.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Randy, for you being here and the leadership that you've provided to the directors, and that we can
Thank you, but-
achieve these goals.
Yep. Yes.
Thank you, but again, I'm just coaching, and hopefully the players are going to produce. And in this case, I'm
It
very
certainly
pleased.
takes teamwork, so
It does.
congrats to the staff.
When you'll see this in action, of course, the documentation she'll be providing to the auditors upon their arrival and so forth, or prior to their arrival, they'll have all of this in advance of. Which is more of the customary way to do this. It also, we hoped in it is maybe as early as the next agenda, have you a copy of those reports for the first time, I think, in some
and then
time.
we'll receive them on a monthly basis after
Yes,
that?
there'll be a monthly update for fiscal years going forward. Once she completes the annual information for the past fiscal year in final form to the auditor, then she will be bringing us up to date on the activities thus far for the fiscal year we're in now.
Okay. Good news.
Yes, yes. Okay, before we adjourn the special meeting, are there any other comments? Okay, well, is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay, special meeting is adjourned. Okay, and we're going to take a real quick break before we begin our commission workshop. If you've come in, we would like for you to sign in, and there's a handout for anybody that's in the audience about the workshop going forward. Okay, so Kathy.
What we're in commercial right now?
The Clewiston City Commission workshop is now called to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any public comments before we go into the workshop? And again, the workshop is to discuss establishing municipal priorities for 2020 with management recommended focus on sustainability enhancements and resiliency of the following: infrastructure, economic development, and brand enhancement and marketing. Okay. Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we've given you a few handouts, and they're hole punch so you can put them in your booklet that we had from the January meeting. I would recommend you include your agenda, less the audit information, and put it in there. We'll have the first handout, of course, with the agenda after the audit information was just another copy of the agenda we used for the January workshop, a couple of sheets. And then we have what I'll refer to as the 27 quarter administrative update. This was prepared this month. I will not read it, but I wanted to just point out a few things for the purpose of those who don't have a copy. And of course, this information will be available on our website and so forth going forward, along with the information we're going to present tonight to supplement this report. I always try to give credit where credit is due. Sometimes I fail to do that, but I particularly want to point out the mayor inspired me. I hate to single her out for this, but she inspired me with some information she shared with me that she got from another source that gave me some ideas, and I'll point out when I get to that part of the report what that was. But I did want to acknowledge her input helped me in trying to.
It's just a paragraph.
Yeah, it was a paragraph, but it was a powerful one, and it gave me a really good insight into how to present this, because it's a broad topic. You know, the whole thing of economic development we went over at the last workshop is very broad, and we talked about different focuses within that, and we spent a lot of time on those. But tonight I'm focusing solely on the 27 corridor and two other districts that attach to that corridor or encompass part of that corridor that, in my recommendation, need attention. Since that session last time, the staff and I have worked on several initiatives. We'll be giving you updates on some of those. I know the city attorney has distributed a draft 27 corridor proposed ordinance for your consideration and review. The staff's reviewing that and going to give their feedback. This was based on the previous effort that I found the books of the final deliverables in, I guess that was in 2016, those documents that were very detailed. And as I said the last meeting, I don't think we need new reports and studies. What we're trying to do is just pull from the documents that have been there the things that need to have some consideration and action. And that's one of them, is the actual draft ordinances that would affect some of the recommendations that you'll be finalizing as we go forward. The next, we also have done some field visits. I've been out with staff and done field visits focused on the corridor in particular. We've done some assessments. We put together some statistical information that we'll be sharing with you at future in our monthly reports on enforcement details along the corridor in particular. So I won't spend a lot of time on that tonight because I think we've got a pretty heavy plate here to go through this evening. Another significant thing we've done is we had a staff brainstorming discussion. That was not all staff. We focused it on those departments that are involved in enforcement, code, regulatory, in terms of public works policies and procedures, the utility department, code enforcement, and community development. And that was the focus of that brainstorming session. I plan to have more of those on this and other topics going forward, where we'll bring in other departments for the pieces of this discussion that involve them, like public safety, obviously, on things, some of the safety measures that are listed and will be discussed. And in finance, when we talk about funding and funding strategies and so forth, we'll have finance involved in that. But as I said earlier in the other meeting, our finance director's been tied up with some very important items that took precedent over her being involved in this process thus far. But she will be going forward, or her staff. So we've been collecting those relevant statistics. We've got some other draft enforcement tools, some of which have been around but weren't adopted or maybe need tweaking. So we're looking at that on several fronts. That's not the focus of tonight's meeting. What we did in this brainstorming session was try to come up with some things that we could present to you as in response to your comments about making the corridor and its redevelopment and development a priority, and improving aesthetics, improving safety for pedestrians as well as vehicular safety and so forth. I've listed a number of the items. Again, I'm not going to read them, but we've looked at some of the discussions about a brick paver type stamped asphalt theme for crosswalks at stoplight intersections. And you see the detail about that. And we would recommend that similar look be, brick look, be incorporated into other appropriate locations throughout the city, like was in the new welcome signs. And we already had some discussion along that. And you'll see another recommendation in the presentation that we'll close this out with, that Travis and I are going to make with regard to another potential location that would be significantly impacted by that same type design. We also looked at upgrading existing street lighting installations. Danny's done some research on how many we have, what the potential cost would be. We'll be looking at ways to try to put that together. But the essence of it would be decorative poles that have a dual function with dual arms that would give lighting for pedestrian uses as well as the vehicular use of the highway, and the equipment associated with that and so forth. We want to incorporate in that a pole design that would accommodate the load for attaching banners and hanging type planting baskets, possibly as an option, and those allow for irrigation hardware to be included. Another item that follows right with that is to develop a themed street banner plan for seasonal display of banners on upgraded streetlight poles. To have a rotation for those. It could be holiday related. A lot of communities do that. Or patriotic. It could be branding type themes like America's Sweetest Town and so forth. We would design those and they'd be appropriately sized and equipped based on the different districts that we would place those in. And I'll refer more to that in a few moments, particularly the downtown area and what's being proposed for our waterfront access. Next, and a big one, we would support FDOT-approved community aesthetic features. We've already got the installed entrance welcome signs, and those are being finalized. And with the support of partners like the Fair Board and the county, we'd like the commission to consider the installation of an additional feature in the form of a flagpole to display the American flag as a form of approved public art under DOT's regulations in the median on the western entrance to the city limits, where the speed zone reduces down. We've had contact with DOT. That can be done, and we can meet their requirements, and it can be paid for by others, not impacting on the city budget except minimal maintenance costs going forward and operating costs, which the county has indicated a willingness to share some of those. Next, implementing an additional phases, if necessary, of our corridor landscaping. The royal palm tree plantings that have been completed. I've seen information on the longer term, the broader plan that was initially considered. We discussed the possibilities for this being extended to both city limits along the 27 corridor with the necessary irrigation and pursuing additional FDOT funding to make that happen. We also want to look at additional landscaping needs within the median along the corridor where there is a median area, and some of the other changes that might create additional areas for landscaping. Another key area we discussed is something that's very popular among public agencies that have done this kind of endeavor, cities and counties to some degree, but mostly cities and towns, is to develop a plan for the display of public art within the corridor and the downtown district and the new proposed lakefront district, as I've phrased it. Elements of the plan would include approved public art on publicly owned properties, including right-of-ways, and in limited instances, it could be done on private properties with property owner permission. The example I would use on that's been successfully done is wall art, I'll call it, murals on the sides of some key buildings at entranceways that might improve the aesthetics. I know one of the iconic ones I'm familiar with in another city was a postcard type design that had that city on it, and it was an older postcard type design, and it was the city of Norfolk, Virginia, and it's iconic, huge on the side of a building, and people take their pictures and really focus on it, but it was big enough that it was an attraction to the traveling public. Some would argue it's another billboard, but it's a little different than that. So that's one of just the ideas. Others would be they could have city branding type themes like we mentioned. You could have themed painting or approved coatings on traffic signal boxes. I'll just pass a couple that Travis pulled off quickly down for y'all to look at. I didn't make copies of all of these. That could be either painting, it could be artwork of some type, or it can be a wrap that's like you see on vehicles and boats that are done now. And that's very commonplace. And again, you would want to come up with a theme for it. And right now, it can only be done on the traffic signal boxes, which are at our crossings that have traffic signals. And I'm just going to hit the highlights of some of these and to generate any discussion you want to have tonight or at a later time. These might be really appropriate on some other type themes in the downtown area or the lakefront district, if you agree with that concept. And it was also mentioned about having statues. You could have a fish artwork type statue is one that was suggested. I know where I previously was working, we had a huge marlin that ironically was designed by a designer from Florida that was put in a fountain, and it had some really nice designs to it and was lighted, and it became a favorite spot for people to gather and take pictures and wish and throw their quarter into the well or the fountain. So those are just some ideas. Other towns I've seen and have researched come up with other things that reflect local culture or local economics. It could be sugar cane, it could be anything. They're done in all kinds of things from brass to bronze to stone. You've seen them at all the municipal areas you've been to, and you could have this around town. The famous one in Smithfield, Virginia, with Smithfield hams. They actually have designs of pigs. I don't think we want to recommend we do the wild pigs here, but they're doing good enough, I guess, the ones that are out and about. But they did that, and then they had some famous statues of people that were important to that area sitting on park benches, and people would sit beside them and do whatever. That's just something that was unique to that community. Don't know what ideas that might be generated from that, but fishing is certainly one that we see, and it would particularly be appropriate for certain areas of town, like the lakefront district that we're recommending consideration of. One that was done in a community I've managed was a fish walk. What that was on the sidewalks at different locations, and they were sponsored by businesses and others, and that's how they were placed. We had a brochure done, a digital brochure that would show people where the fish walk was. You go to one block and there would be a an artist designed thing that was about this wide and about that deep that was actually set on a base in the sidewalk, and it had a plaque, and it was the Barracuda. Then you'd have the Marlin one, and then you'd have, and it was pretty nice artwork, and you had this, and people would walk all throughout the downtown and waterfront district there and see all of them and see what businesses sponsored it. So those are just ideas, nothing that we're recommending would be, it's similar to what's already been done here with the unique pole lights or pole designs where we have the bass fish along the area heading to the boat ramp. I don't know who did that. I haven't asked anybody, but it's a pretty unique. Sean explained to me we also have I don't know what it's called. It's not a silhouette, but it's a
bass cutout.
Bass cutout that's on our bathroom structure down there. So those are just some of the ideas that you could consider for appropriate locations throughout the community. And you could, again, look at historically appropriate icons that you might consider. Another thing we identified as a need is a better wayfinding plan, and that's just a fancy way of saying signage that gets people to where they want to go and tells them what's available. Some communities, the one we have here now, and Sean's been upgrading that. I don't know if we put it back up yet.
The kiosk on Bond Street.
Yeah, it's on Bond Street. It's a kiosk that shows what businesses are on that street. I think that really fits a downtown area in particular, and maybe areas like the waterfront area if it were to grow and expand. You could consider that for other parts of town, but it's only usually where the speed limits are pretty low and people can really use them to maneuver and vehicular-wise find what they're looking for. Of course, with today, with the technology methods, that's not as much of a problem as it used to be. But wayfinding goes beyond that into signage that designates where public facilities are. We've been trying to get a sign, for example, on the highway that shows people traveling through where the golf course is, just indicating the street that it's on. So those are just some of the ideas. But you have some conformity and some similarity so that they're attractive and they're not just pollution, sign pollution. You don't want it to go to that extreme either. A review of the zoning designations and uses at gateway points entering the city. We'll cover that a little more here in a minute when we get over to the maps, but I'm particularly concerned there with the eastern access. We have a piece there that is currently zoned industrial that we used to have industrial uses on it. It's vacant. Part of it has been cleared. There's still one building there, but there are no industrial uses. And for a gateway into the city at that bridge, I think we need to seriously look at that. And you, as the body that would decide that, would make a decision. There's some other points to that we'll mention a little later, but this goes to what I've heard consistently from members of the board and staff about the front porch views of the city. And obviously, when you enter the city, it's important that we have gateway type improvements there that give a good first impression. But that area is one that when we did our ride-throughs really concerned me when I heard more of the history. The other piece there that needs attention is that bridge. That bridge is a tough one. It limits access to that vacant property for potential redevelopment. And I don't know the age of it or its condition. I haven't looked at any of that yet. But I also have personally seen that it's a challenge with the pedestrian route and the trail that goes through there adjacent to the bridge. It's dangerous, and people turning onto that property or whatever. I've already seen people running that trail or riding a motorized wheelchair. It's not a real safe situation, and as a gateway, that might be something we get with DOT and see when we do the next item I'm going to recommend, and that's the visioning plan for the corridor, that what we can do about it long term. It won't happen overnight, but a lot of it will be driven by the condition of that bridge and whether it could ever be redesigned, rebuilt, replaced, widened possibly, and provide for more alternatives there. But those are just some of the comments on that. The last item in this section for the core division that we spent a good deal of time about, and I've mentioned at the last session, is we've been in touch with DOT. We've had one meeting with them and some phone conversations about getting on the list and being allowed to have access to what they refer to as their District 1 planning studio staff that focus on the corridor, the 27 corridor. Now, the way the state likes to do this is from county line to county line. So if you can envision it, it would be the section of 27 from where it comes into Hendry County and where it leaves and goes into Palm Beach, the entire stretch. Our focus, obviously, is more the middle of that, the part in the city and the approaches to the city, particularly the area from where 80 and 27 come together into the city limits on the west, and then from the east to the county line, from the city limits to the county line. The beauty of this is obviously they provide the resources through their consultant agreements and so forth at no cost to the localities, and produce documents, something similar, I would think, in terms of brochures and things that would help us in our effort to vision what we see the longer term of this being. One of the major elements in that, I'm going to go ahead and put what I consider to be one of the more challenging parts of this, from getting public support and buy-in. It will be a mixed bag, I would imagine. It might be perceived as a negative by some business owners, but I think, having lived here now 7 months and tried to negotiate all the movements on this section of 27 that has the 5-lane, what's commonly referred to as suicide lanes, where people turn in from opposite directions and they headbutt and so forth. I really believe we need to be planning for that to change. And I don't propose that we take out the center turn lane. I think that would be counterproductive. But we could have what I refer to as a controlled turn design, and we'll get you a copy of that. We've been looking to try to find something that's a good example of that. But I know everyone's driven in communities where the traffic volumes have gotten to a point that they control the leftovers at strategic points. Fortunately, our street design is sufficient that I don't see that would prohibit us from having leftovers at most of our street intersections, but you certainly would at all the stoplights. But in between blocks, in the middle of blocks, it would seem that we need to seriously consider that being controlled with medians and landscaping that would act as a traffic calming device and make it safer for people to get in those lanes and make those left turns. Don't have a design yet on that, obviously, but that is one of the points that we'll be discussing with DOT through their planning staff. It won't happen overnight, but I think it's something that needs to be on the radar for this area, particularly since we've had what I hope is just a rash of pedestrian-related issues of late. One fatality, and Travis has informed me of a couple of other instances in and around Clewiston of pedestrian issues competing with vehicles and injuries that resulted. That's pretty much a summary of that. The other areas, I'll just highlight and then we'll come back and discuss them, is the downtown streetscape enhancements, much of which mirrors what we would be talking about for 27, because that would be part of what's now defined as the downtown area on your future land use plan. And it includes areas like Ventura and Bond and all of the areas, particularly to the south of 27 and some to the north. That I won't read that whole section, but it includes consideration of the public-owned properties in the center, where you have the museum, you have the city hall, you have the former police department building, looking at potential uses to put in that facility or replace that facility with something else that would enhance the downtown central type business district. and take advantage of some of the things like tourism and so forth. And I want to talk a little bit, and I want to go over there if I could when we get to this, after we maybe discuss section 1, about something with Central Avenue that I want to point out a few things related to the history of the John Nolan plan and what a vision could be for that area. Lastly, we put this together with a suggested new district. I haven't seen where it's been used before, a lakefront district enhancements. It would have many of the same information, but the difference would be that downtown and to some degree as appropriate and the lakefront district, you'll see the language included on appropriately scaled entertainment, tourism venues, and opportunities for potential targeted users. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the presentation. Also, that it would have, we have recreation elements, we have parks and recreation areas included in both of those districts or next to those districts in the case of the improvements across the street where much of our central core and where events are held like Sugar Festival and so forth. Also in the downtown area, I want to accentuate, we ought to give consideration to the connectivity to the railroad that area has and what potential that might have, and that's when I'll need to go over to the other podium. But that's a summary of some of these. Again, I've left out a lot of details that we'll cover some mostly in the presentation that we want to conclude with on the lakefront district, and then I'll make my concluding remarks. The two maps you have, they're fold out. The first one is the official zoning map that Travis has provided. Nothing surprising there. That's just a good reference point for you for what the zoning along all these areas are. And then the second map was very useful to us in our discussion, and that is the future land use map that was, I guess, updated in 2014, and it includes much of the discussion that was held during the previous plan when the city was going through that process. So those are there for your reference. Finally, the thing that I got some inspiration on that I mentioned earlier is I've created 3 just worksheets, and these are just drafts. The first one is Sugarland Highway Corridor Goal. And you see what that says. For the audience, I'll read the highlighted portion. The goal for that, if you, whatever form you finally approve it, the suggested draft of that is to improve the streetscape along the Sugarland Highway Corridor and promote economic development by providing new and improved infrastructure, increasing available parking, improving street lighting, enhancing landscaping, and upgrading as necessary pedestrian access and safety through sidewalk improvements and other related efforts. I won't read the unhighlighted portion, but suffice it to say that will make it more safe.
If you could go ahead and read it, I think it's important. Yeah.
All right, I agree. So the enhanced corridor will be safer and more attractive to the community and visitors alike. But most importantly, it will generate a new level of economic development by leveraging public investment aimed at encouraging and facilitating private investment from business and property owner interest in future parcel development and redevelopment. And I agree, Mayor, I should have read that because that relates to all 3. The second sheet, I won't read it all. It's very similar. It's the downtown district goal would be to likewise improve the streetscape through the downtown district or central business district in the heart of Clewiston by doing those same activities I just listed, and you have a discussion of that. And then, likewise for the lakefront district goal that's being proposed to create this new district to improve recreational access to Lake Okeechobee for the community and visitors alike and promote tourism-based economic development, including ecotourism, by providing new and improved infrastructure, facilities, and opportunities for interested citizens and visitors, particularly the recreational boating and fishing community, as well as impacted business owners and property owners in the vicinity. And then you have discussion about the various methods of doing that. That is the presentation that I have there. we can discuss that, Mayor, one at a time, each of the three sections, districts. Now, or we could have Travis present the third one, which is primarily focused on the new proposed lakefront district. And then, of course, I gave everybody another copy of this, of the your community voice on the revitalization plan that was developed back in 2016.
Well,
So-
Randy, I'm going to start. The 27 corridor discussion has been one that has been ongoing since before the formulation of this in May 2016. And I know we have lots of ideas, and we have lots of great ideas, I will say, about the 27 corridor. But I want to know a plan. I want to know how we're going to do that economic development as we discussed in this plan and in the goals. I mean, I want to know specifically, what are we applying for as far as grants, starting on the east end of town and moving west, so that we can look at partial redevelopment, and what steps are we going to take? I know that this is a goal, but what are the steps that you envision us taking beginning, tomorrow?
All right, so assuming that the buy-in is there and we've already begun some of these discussions, the next step, I think, would be to have some strategic. I don't like the word targeting because that sounds has a negative connotation, but identifying some strategic locations that might be the closest we'll have to lower hanging fruit. There are some areas where they've been cleared. We've had developers and real estate interest telling us there's interest in some of these properties, but there's impediments like we've talked about it, the alleys and relocating of utilities. I've developed a short list of some of the ones in my tours and assessments going through the corridor, and gotten some input from some of you. Working with the existing buildings that are in good shape that need filling, that's would be some of them. I don't want to. I'll just throw one out as an example: the U-Save building. Trying to work with those property owners to see what we can do to get a new anchor in that. There are a number of others that we can talk about, and I've made again a list of the ones that jumped out at me. Working with the Bond Street property owners is another potential, and the adjoining properties, the dentist and some of the other businesses to try to improve that area. Although we've seen some good investment and improvement to some of those property owners, and particularly what's going on in the block where the Hampton Inn is going, and the synergy that's creating on the four corners of that. Another one, obviously, is to complete and move forward with our car dealership on the redevelopment of their site. Danny can maybe give you an update on where we're at with that. We're ready to go with the utilities. We've had recent conversations with the builder, the owner, and it's our expectation that that's imminent and going to happen in the near term. But pick out some of those and have some wins, some successes, and hopefully create energy. But what I'd like to do is come back with a list of those, and we give you updates on the status of several of those that we identify as the short list. And as you just pointed out, Mayor, any of them that's going to require additional public funding, like the car dealership we addressed in this year's budget. So I don't anticipate anything changing there. But some of these others are going to require more actions like closing alleys, and we've had other development interests flirting with some of the property owners up and down through here. But see who's ready and who will put their money up, and then go after a grant application like the city had some not so great success with on the hotel site, but hopefully this time get it right and pursue USDA funding. We've identified that as a source, SBA for the developer side. And the owner side, we've looked at other potential sources for one for the waterfront area, for example, is for boating access. We've looked at that, and that's coming up on deadlines. Some of these are going to be coming on deadlines in the near term. and others are for infrastructure related, like Ventura, trying to fill a gap there for the drainage and some of the other things that we know are going to be issues there. But that would be a progression of the next step. We would bring some of those and we'd keep you apprised of the progress on each and determine which ones that were needy or timely or worthy of public investment, and then scrape up either whatever funding we can come up with versus pursuing grant resources to fill the void.
Randy, if I may, and I've mentioned this before, that I think the key is moving forward. It's going to take some time that we have to get in somehow contact with the owner of Platiners, the person that bought the Ford, the Ford building that got torn down, and have conversation. The USAFE people. And I know what they've done there. I don't know what drove that, but it looks good. The landscaping they put in.
Yeah, big improvement.
Big improvement. But now we need to get somebody in the building to anchor that center. So what I'm recommending at some point is for you, Randy, to have a conversation with these owners and calling them and even going where you need to go. If you need to go to Okeechobee, Miami, wherever those owners are, and see what their plans are. I mean, because they're the ones, without them moving forward, we can do everything prior to that, moving the infrastructure, moving the electric, moving the gas lines, moving everything. But till we know that we have a commitment from those owners that they're thinking about reopening or redeveloping those properties, I've said, we gotta contact the players to be able to see what their intentions are going forward, because without their input, we're lost. I mean, we could do everything we want to do on our side, and if they're not ready to redevelop, nothing's going to happen.
And I agree with that strategy. I think we take who is ready and we assess. If some aren't, then we move on to the next. We've had expressions of interest from some property owners and developers that they're ready and they're ready to go and can, for example, the property next to the Hampton Inn, that owner is very interested in redevelopment and has indicated that. And his targets would be either the restaurant type or something in the way of a convenience type store like Wawa, or that was the one that he had mentioned that was interested possibly. So we want to work with them and see what are the impediments to their plan, and then as the mayor alluded to, pursue funding, because I think we're going to have a bird in hand to get much in the way of grants on some of these things. You've got to have buy-in and participation by the property owner. But And I don't see the city taking its limited resources and just going out and speculating on which ones. I think we've got to find the ones that are ready to go and most likely to do something. And that's where we would come to you and ask for approval to commit funding like we did with Allen J, this current year budget, and do that with some of these others if it's something that the city can do. If it's infrastructure needs or other changes.
If I may, if Travis can give us an update on Allen J, because it seems to me like
maybe Danny can probably
nothing's happening over there, and we've been talking about Allen J now for the last year.
Yeah, you want to give him an update, Danny? I think he's more up to date.
Anybody knows anything on Allen J?
Been communicating them with them on the utility side.
When they're going to knock the building down? When they're going to bring the new one up?
Utility director. They're finishing up in Wauchula, and he's telling me it looks like March. They just remodeled that store there. Actually, I just texted the guy.
Are they going to remodel, or are they going to tear down?
They're going to tear down. They'll use some of the structure they have, but they're going to build the new part in the back half, and then of course the show or the parking lot will be out front.
And we've seen renderings, preliminaries on that, but the latest we had is they're nearing pulling the trigger on that once they wrap up this other.
Yeah.
Okay. So have they
And I
pulled
also
any
reached
permits?
out to, I'll tell you this, I reached out to Plattner yesterday.
Plattner?
Yeah, the guy's name's David. So what I heard, he wants like $2 million for the property. So I want to talk to him.
So,
and maybe
there's
shoot
yeah.
that direction.
I think we know that there's lots of possibilities and opportunities along Highway 27, but the bottom line is that the actual look of our front porch, so to speak, is not acceptable. And what I want to do is we've started some things, but we've got to do some major things to be able to continue to attract people who want to invest on Highway 27 to garner that traffic that's coming through there. I mean, and I agree with Commissioner Rodriguez. We can do a lot of planning and talking, but we've got to get some contacts. But the major things that we've heard from some of the property owners is that there's not enough parking. And the only way to get that parking is for us to look at continuing to abandon the alleys. So the properties they have with maybe properties across the alley or a parcel of properties, which we've heard, discussed over the years and we've seen happen with Walgreens, with where You Save is at, where trying to think of other places, but I know there's several other places that we have worked with those owners and now with Alan J as well, to be able to fully develop those properties. And I think that to me, that's the priority if we want to make some changes on Highway 27.
I agree with you, and that's why I mentioned the dentist office and that area with Bond. I think parking is an area there that could be significantly enhanced,
Right.
and it can be done without us buying property or whatever, if we can maybe incent the property owners to agree to some sharing arrangement. And I've been told there's been some discussions in the past, but for whatever reason that didn't materialize. So that's one of the ones that I'm going to be meeting with and seeing if we can find some common ground and what can the city do to incent the property owners that are affected to improve that relationship so that everybody is benefiting. And fairly benefiting. Nobody's getting free parking and not participating in the cost associated with providing parking.
On what Dan just said, I've heard of this comment before, that the properties on 27 that are vacant and maybe up for sale, one of the issues that there is that the owners have those properties overpriced. And the problem, a business will come in, but they're not going to overpay. They're not going to want to overpay for their initial, buying, whether it's buying a land or buying a building. So that's kind of one of the complaints that I've heard through the years and I think Dan pointed $2 million for that planner's property. Guarantee you, ain't going to be a lot of buyers for that.
That's a deal killer for most.
$2 million is a lot of money.
And that's why if you get comparables, if we can get some successes that set the bar at a more reasonable level, hopefully the other property owners will see that they're out of price. But that's obviously one that we don't control, is what somebody wants to sell their property for.
I understand that.
Now, other than code enforcement on it, if it's deficient or whatever, we don't have a lot of options. But my suggestion is something like that. We move on to somebody that is more reasonable, and we try to work with them to make their property be just as marketable as that location.
Yeah. Because to me, that planner's property is one of the best. I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
One of those planners, and that's the last I'll say on this. The planner's property is an ideal place to develop right now for a restaurant or whatever, because that you can close the alley and you can use the back piece too. I think they own both. I think, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He owns it.
And that's the only leverage we really got. If they want our participation, they're going to have to make a deal with somebody. And if nobody's going to pay what they're asking, then we move on to another location.
And I think the market, the property owners are going to do what they want, and the market will go that way or not go that way. But I think for infrastructure improvements and for what we've been talking about, we have got to do our part. I know that USDA, maybe there has to be somebody or a property owner that'll agree to that. But in the past, we've had people who've come up to us here at the commission meeting and say, we're making the request because we want y'all to look at it, because we do believe for the future that we can have growth. And I guess I'm seeing all these ideas and us all up here talking, and we can talk till the cows come home. But until we have a plan of step 1, step 2, step 3 of what we're going to do, I know we have the ordinance. You mentioned the ordinance at the P&Z board. When are they going to meet? When are we going to see their input?
We've scheduled that meeting.
And then from there, what are the steps? I know we have the goals, which I think is exactly what we needed to have, but we're not in a shortage of any ideas.
Yeah, that's
I just
true.
want work.
And another piece of that is the CRA. We're going to have to really take a serious look at that as to what role we can play with our CRA in funding ideas and things within, and look at what areas are included, and do we want to expand that, and what are the benefits of that. You were going to say something?
Yes, so I like the goals. I'm glad that we have goals, but I think we have to now prioritize these goals because otherwise it's going to be too much for us. So the lakefront district goal, which we're going to see a presentation on, I think that has to be a long-term goal because it's going to take a lot of money to do that. I bet I still like it because if we know we're going to move in that direction, is a grand thing. I don't understand what the difference between the Sugarland Highway corridor is and the downtown district is. Is there a difference between those two goals?
Different area because it includes a piece of Sugarland Highway, but it goes beyond it to the south in particular.
Okay, so
to include those
I think
areas.
we should remove the downtown district goal and focus on the Sugarland Highway corridor goal.
Well, the only comment I would make on that is it may look like we have a broad array, but I think it won't be that would be necessarily the same focus as the 27, but if someone's interested in doing something in there, we need to have a plan that addresses their need. Because when we resurface portions of Ventura and we come up with a plan, we can use outside resources like the planning council to help us develop and come up with a design. That's not going to detract us from the priority area like the corridor.
But everything costs money. And
Well,
so
but the difference is there are some sources of funding for these different pieces. Like the lakefront, I agree with you that that's a more long-term plan, but we've got a window until that bridge is open and done, that we've got a lot of time in there to do planning and come up with it. But there are a lot more resources for funding for that probably than some of these things we're talking about on the corridor.
And that's okay
downtown.
because you can have goals, but your primary objective is this Sugarland Highway corridor goal, in my opinion. And
that's the feedback I've gotten loud and clear.
To Molly's comments, I think we have to drill down on this now. So where are we going to start? Because, and also Commissioner Rodriguez he wants to know where are we going to start communicating? Because we obviously cannot talk to all the owners at one time. We can't organize whatever. So now we have this goal. So now let's implement the goal with strategic plan. And I think previously we had tried to start at that end and work our way this way.
Start east and go west.
Right.
And that might be a goal, but I think you're going to go wherever you have the interest and commitment.
That's
wherever
fine.
it is in that section.
I agree.
But if we, so if we have so I think we have to pick a block though that's important to us and say we're going to focus on that block, because the next thing we have to say is where are we going to get the money to do what we want to do with moving the structure, and which leads me to our next goal that I want to add to our goals, which is finances and budget, because we have to find ways to support ourselves and be resourceful ourselves, and because while grants and everything are important and a resource for us, if these things are really important to us, then we'll put our money where our mouth is. So I think we have to tie those two goals together.
I think that's really, in my opinion, more appropriate with the first item we had at the last one on infrastructure, because that's where most of the funding is going to fall, and that's where I had envisioned that would have a key component would be financing. Of course, some of these enhancement things for the corridor obviously would require funding, but hopefully we'll be able to get some significant support from DOT and others for some of those pieces. I think, in my mind, I think that we're going to be almost like the juggler who's got a lot of things in the air, and we're going to try to keep them all up, but we can't spread ourselves too thin on that. I agree with that comment. But I think it's good to have these other plans in reserve because something comes our way that's an opportunity. It doesn't mean you drop everything and run over there and address it. You can simultaneously do multiple things and,
You can,
and keep
but-
the ball moving.
You can, but sometimes when you're trying to do a lot of things, you get nothing accomplished, and that's been the
That's obviously
experience.
So I
that's
just wanna-
obviously tainted the waters
I
here.
just want to hold this up.
Yeah, and we don't want to create
I mean-
that same mistake of falling into that trap because we get so spread so thin that we don't really accomplish anything.
So can we, from this meeting to the next, say, okay, yeah, we all agree that these are great ideas with regard to the things that you've detailed here. I've looked, and I think that we can maybe either pay for ourselves out of the budget or apply for a grant with regard to I don't care what it is, the brick paver type stamped asphalt. And that's going to be a goal. We're going to accomplish this goal by and set a date for us to say we're going to really push hard to do this and get this done. So we need to know grant deadlines. We need to know, hey, we're going to try to build that into our budget for this next cycle. So we need $50,000 or whatever we need to do, and this is where we think we're going to get it from.
And that'll be part of the incentive is we'll have those items that are going to be for the next budget cycle coming
Right.
to you in terms of on that capital plan, the 5-year plan, but the first year of it would be funding for next fiscal year and try to give you some that you can then prioritize which ones you think are the best items to go
So
forward.
like the flagpole, that's something that we
Yeah.
could easily accomplish that
That's
goal.
an easy one because we don't really have a cost.
But we
related
have to follow through because the county thinks we're trying to get the approval and the city, so if we just tackle that, then we can get all the credit too.
See, I think that one's moving along fairly quickly. And
So Randy, since she's mentioned the flagpole, so you said the DOT inside the city limits did not have an issue with us placing a.
no, there are requirements.
Right.
There's a height limit. There's different things, but the location, we got a little quirkiness there. I won't get too deep in the weeds, but we have a 50 zone and then a 40 zone. They say the max is 45. Hopefully they would give us a waiver and we could put it in the 50 zone because that's the first zone after you cross the railroad track coming
Right.
in. So that's a good example. Other than that, just
I'm in
accepting.
favor of dropping to 45 miles an hour.
Well,
anyway.
that's another point that I didn't put in here, but speed limits will be part of that visioning plan that we will assess based on the traffic volumes through the city's jurisdiction. And that would be one of the areas of potentially dropping it, not just for the flagpole, but for
Overall.
other reasons. Because typically, if everybody knows if you drive, the chief can maybe disagree with me, but if it's a 45 zone, you're driving 57 or 52 or whatever. And particularly when you're coming from a 60 plus into it, that's a challenge anyway. So the sooner we can drop that, the better.
So we know that that's a goal right now, or it's a work in progress that we believe we can get a resolved pretty quickly.
Yes.
And I know that the Fair Board has been fundraising for this, and I know that there's also the Veterans Organization has also said that they would wish to help with flagpoles.
And
as
if
well.
they don't with that one, if we have sufficient resources from the ones that are committed, I had an idea of the other group doing something in Sugarland Park over here across the road because that's a very inadequate pole.
Or one on each end of the town.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a possibility too. I don't know that we could meet all the requirements on the east end, but we can certainly look at it
Right.
at an appropriate location
And
somewhere
Melanie,
else.
I
in town.
apologize. You were talking. I just wanted to bring up the flagpole, make sure that we were good.
Yeah, I
go
don't want
on
to
that.
forget that one because I did want to report it because we've gotten some really good feedback. And the next step for that, we have to have a concept plan submitted by an engineer, and that's the next step is to get that to DOT.
I'm just dealing with some of the particulars that I see in here, like the FDOT community approved aesthetic features. One of the things along US 27 that I think we can do are like remove the old City of Clewiston signs now.
They
That
come as part of the contract.
Oh, they're going to be removed as part of that? Oh, that's good news.
Or we do it. We ended up, I think that was our commitment. We have to do that.
And then the city
That
has...
was envisioned that they will come down
Okay.
once the others are finalized.
The city has other poles along 27, concrete poles and things that serve no purpose, like where we used to have banners across 27 and things like that. Just take them out because let's lead by example, things like that. Murals, I'm not a fan of murals just because we have murals on that one, which is a private mural, but we see that it's gone faded for years
That's
and
what
years
happens
and years, and I don't really like that.
You know, and we had,
Pool,
On the pool, I don't.
I've got the high school class coming to repaint it.
and I was gonna address that. We had talked about the murals previously, and our teacher that we had then left.
So
Mrs. Horn is very focused. She has an AP art class. They're very dedicated. They're very talented, and she would be someone that would stand up to say we can do this.
well, I
You know,
my concern about doing it is that just like the other one left, then we have it, and I guess we can always paint over it if it gets to the.
Well, that's
whatever,
what
but
you do.
I'm just
Right.
saying is
The
that
danger with private properties, you got to have an agreement, because if it doesn't stay in good repair, it becomes an eyesore.
so I'm not a real big fan of that. Okay, the Comcast and CenturyLink boxes around town. They couldn't be wrapped if they wanted to be wrapped because they're in such bad condition, which I've talked to you about.
No,
getting
these are
them.
these
I
are
don't know
the
what.
traffic boxes
Well, I
that
don't.
are
Yeah, but they're
Right.
stainless
Oh, okay.
looking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like the
What about
one in
Highway
front of the
27?
Hampton Inn.
Yeah, but even the other ones around
I
town, they're
agree.
terrible.
There's sometimes the doors
ridiculous.
are all open and the rain's
Yeah.
getting
Now
in them.
that's a
Are you
maintenance
talking about the
and
green boxes?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a phone company.
Oh.
Sure.
They don't do that anymore.
So can we just take those boxes out, or can we
I
make them
see
take them out?
repairmen at
All
them.
those guys, I mean, you're,
Expensive.
that's,
I see repairmen at them all the time.
yeah.
So we need to
yeah,
get
they're
a
still
hold.
used, but
We need to get a
but
hold.
but maybe we can work with them to improve them. Like I say, the one that had a nice impact where I was is we did the fire hydrants, and he did it in a theme, and it ended up being pretty neat. And
Yeah, I think I
kids-
think the Boy Scouts did that around here one time with painted little hats on them or something.
yeah,
The FDOT planning studio staff, if we can maybe get them to come and make a presentation and get them to buy into our community, I think that would be good. I'm a little bit worried about the medians, the suicide lanes. I think they used to have medians down 27.
that's
didn't
the
they?
evolution. They had them, they took them all out, and now they're putting them back everywhere
okay.
because it was so unsafe.
Converting the former police department, no. I
No,
think it's
no, not on our dime, but we're responsible for that building. But if we could put a business incubator in there where new businesses could start up,
as bad as they told us that building
require
is.
renovation. But that's
tear
an
that thing down.
emergency use versus a business office use.
I think that when it didn't meet the requirements to go through a hurricane, I don't think any renovations is going to bring it up to
Well,
date.
but honestly, most of the other buildings around it are of the same type construction, metal frame.
I don't think it's the type of construction, it's the integrity of the
And that's where there are grants available to renovate and upfit those kind of buildings into a useful facility, not for emergency services,
No, I'm saying
but
that.
just for business use.
But the
as a
sale
storefront.
of the new police station to the commission was that building is in such bad shape.
It was for police use, no question. I've been through it, and it's still that way. But it shouldn't sit there and become an eyesore.
I say tear it
Make some
down.
use of it. And it could be replaced with a new structure, but that is more money. And so if you can make a use of it that complements the downtown district, that's happening all over. And there's a demand for this right now. I won't get into the weeds, but with some of the new business interests looking at the airport and other things, they're going to be looking for temporary office space. And we took, previously I took a old dilapidated building, had all the windows knocked out. We turned it a buggy factory, 4-story. We turned it into a location that had 80 businesses, over 200 employees, and had an economic benefit to the community in the millions. And all we did was go after grant money to rehab it and make it into a nice facility. Now, I'm not saying that one, the bones are probably the structure, but it would have to be completely gutted and completely renovated to make it for any use of that nature. But that's just an idea. But there again, that's not one that you would do as a top priority. Yeah. If you got the grant funding, you could do it. But if you don't, not putting city funds into it.
Okay, so
But that's good feedback.
okay, so I'm good with those goals, but again, I want to prioritize them, and I also And are we gonna discuss the other goals as well? Or,
Well, I would like to conclude the presentation on this part if we
Okay.
could. And I just wanted to, we pretty much covered it. I did want to point out one of these other ideas in working with
You
our
said you wanted to
partners.
come over here.
Yeah, particularly, if I could. And where's that point at? You got it. How do you- Okay, that thing, just a point. All right, I don't know if it'll show up.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that, in looking at the Nolan plan, that I thought was really fascinating, and somebody did some good planning, in my opinion. Planning was how I got started in local government, so I'm real impressed with some of these ideas. Particularly, you know, this design and the Central Avenue and the railroad down here. And the way the city is laid out. I think that's really good stuff and something we shouldn't forget about. It's not high priority and something that's going to happen right away. But what I've tried to do is listen to what some of the partners that we have, either whether it be the county with the flagpole or the U.S. Sugar with some of their ideas for potential. And one of the things they have mentioned is the possibility out in this area, and y'all have heard this before, of doing property north of the railroad track, north of the golf course. They have looked at doing something in terms of a museum or whatever for the rail aspect. And the rail obviously has huge significance to this community because in the books I've read, that was the first thing coming from Moorhaven here in mud, from what I read. And people, one of those books about one of the people that was a child that was on it at the time. So if they have the idea or the desire to do something to recognize that industry of a rail line or whatever, and consider putting resources into some sort of museum or even I've heard discussion of a rail car that would be able to operate and access the system.
Steam engine.
Yeah, steam engine. Yeah.
It's a-
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, they've rehabbed the equipment and they've got it over here and working on it. So one idea is, and I had some success with this in another community, is this is a really interesting street, Central. And Travis has shared with me some of the insights of how that was envisioned and how this was going to be a city core, city heart of the city. You have the city buildings here that contribute to that. You have the museum and so forth. But what if we were to work with our partners that own it all, and we don't have the old depot, it's gone, but there are pictures of it. A lot of communities captured those units, rehabbed them. I was successful in doing that once. We created a visitor center type facility that had, it was set up like a ticket booth, the old train station concept. And we used it for community events. People would rent it, the larger room for those type of events like weddings and receptions and things of that nature. And it had that look to it that was really nice. Given the significance of rail, what if we could work with Sugar and recreate that to the railroad track? And what if they were to consider this option over that option? The rail's already there. They wouldn't have to take up valuable developable property to create a spur. They could do something in this area if they chose and possibly recreate some of those facilities. We've got a building not too far away that's not heavily used. I don't want to get into specific ones, but you know, there's some thought could be given to that, and we could work with our partners if they want to do something on their property. They could certainly consider that. And what I'm shooting at with that is we got this museum that, by the latest counts, is getting 6,000 people a year during the season coming through here, taking bus tours that are funded by our partner and touring the sugar operation and the fields. And they'd come to Clewiston, and other than eating at some of our restaurants, I was down at the marina and it was full, 2 bus loads of them recently, having lunch. They'd take a bus ride through our operation up here, and that's about all we had to offer. But if we have some amenities, some things that would attract them, when they come on those sugar tours, they might come back as a visit here for other reasons and support our economy that way. So I think you got to play with the best things you got, and I think we ought to give that some consideration if they're interested. Now, that would really involve their decision making, but it gives them an possible alternative to something out here that might not be as fitting as something in this location. So that's just one idea that I did want to point out, since I've had some conversations very preliminarily with those folks. And of course, you can look at all these others. But going with the other comment about the downtown, in terms of this location and how it sort of hovers on the north side, you've got the parks in the areas that are surrounding the sugar offices that the city has. You've got entertainment venues that are currently being used. You got greater options down here to do entertainment venues, and I'm setting the stage for this PowerPoint that we'd like to show you of some ideas. It doesn't really matter where the things would be, it's just looking at potential elements that would be key to it, that there's likely some sources of funding that we could get started on that. And with that window between now and when that bridge is relocated, we've got time to work on those without making them a priority over other more immediate needs, but do more than one thing with our current efforts for the longer haul. Because I do agree that a number of these things are probably multi-year kind of considerations, but they don't happen if you don't start. It's like we talked about a potential truck route it mentioned at the last meeting, or other alternatives. It takes 20 years to do something like that. So if you don't talk about it for 10 more years, it's going to be 20 years from then. So then it's 30 years. So that's the kind of thing I don't want to see us fall into that trap either. We want to be strategic. We want to focus on this area of 27 that needs attention, but we don't want to forget about all the other possibilities that would help us complement that effort. Because the more we can attract that 6,000 visitors, that's very unique. That's something that's an audience that we're not capturing anything out of other than that lunch and them here for a few hours, and they know where we are on the map. But I've had couples come in here. I had two the other day from Connecticut, and they couldn't figure out where the lake was. They walked in, I just happened to see them. And that to me is resounding of how people don't know what's there. I was just as ignorant when I came here the first time, other than just driving up there and hearing the conversation.
Can I mention that we've talked about signage over the years, and it's just we have not been able to get it right. And to me, the lack of, even though Highway 27 has some signs, there's not enough on North Francisco, especially with that turn on Herbert Hoover Dyke Road.
Yep.
So that's something that that I think you need to be looking at as well as on signage. So
yes,
go ahead.
I agree. Wayfinding, that's a big part of that, because there's no reason that these folks here shouldn't have a better approach and attraction to get them over here to whatever we can come up with that would benefit the visitors. And that's not saying there's something wrong with what we have. It's just outdated and it's not adequate. It needs to be more of an attraction, if you will, a public sector attraction for visitors. Because ecotourism and the bicyclist community across this country are providing big benefits to communities that take advantage of it and provide places they can park, places they can leave their car while they go on the bike, find them other locations. And we've got a tremendous asset with this trail that goes all the way around that lake. Whenever this dike project is complete and it's back in order, that should be generating huge visitorship for that group of people that use that. I know locally we've got a lot of people that use it, but I don't think we're capturing a lot of outside use. Here, maybe we're behind some of our peers, but that is a tremendous asset to have something that's that long and that extensive in a community.
And another thought on the lake, since you're talking about it so much, a pavilion would be nice.
That's in this package. It's a good segue.
I thought about it before is even the museum being moved down
Well, that's a
to the
thought.
lake. And I know it takes a lot more than just saying we're going to move the museum there. It'd be a lot more planning
Pavilion or
involved.
an
And if we
amphitheater.
can't
It
do
would get
something
people
with
there.
this Central Avenue concept, that's an alternative, and it may be a good one. We don't know.
That
Maybe a
would get
visitor
people
center.
there.
Maybe a visitor center down here is an appropriate use. We do have some commercial property you'll see in this presentation that's zoned appropriately where you turn, but it just outside looking in, there hadn't been a lot of attention paid to it, maybe some good ideas in the past, but we got to do more, and that will take time and it'll take money, but hopefully we can do it on other people's dimes to do the design. A master plan is what we need for that area, and that will take some time, but we've got time with that bridge project.
And some of that down there, if you throw the ideas of what you're looking at, people will invest in it when they see the potential in it.
Well,
If they know you're
I'm
willing
going
to
to
do
be
it.
quite honest with y'all. I don't think anybody's going to invest until we do something on Highway 27. We can't even get them off the highway.
I agree.
And that to me, this is all, you know, we were all excited, shiny new, something shiny new. We were all excited about this. Now we're all excited about this. But the bottom line is that we're going to have to do some work, and the work begins on Highway 27. And so I appreciate you envisioning a lot of the stuff, and I like the idea of a railroad depot and the history. I love all that.
Well,
But
I
I'm
agree.
I'm just trying to, I just want us to,
Well, we got to be practical, and we got to get some successes, and 27 is our best. And I do think the effort with the Hampton Inn and that corner is a good start, and the western end of it needs some attention from other areas, but I don't think it's in nearly the condition the eastern end is, the older part. However, again, we've got to have partners. We got to have the private property owner cooperation, and that's going to require some nurturing and some pursuing grant funds. But I don't think we have to put all our eggs in one basket. I think we'd be wise to keep a broader array.
I don't have a problem in envisioning, but I have a problem is that I want to accomplish something
I
before
know,
we start
I
on
know.
to something else. And I can tell you that everything having to do with the lakefront is going to be dependent on Lake Okeechobee. And we know this, Raymond, you could probably talk about this, but when the water goes high or the water goes low, there's nobody coming to see Lake Okeechobee. And so I think it's great that we're having this, and I love the idea of the railroad and the home and the history and the depot, and I want to see all that happen. But I want to be practical as well, because we've sat here and we've talked about stuff, we've come up with plans, and we've yet to have. Maybe
put
we'll
'em
say
into
the Hampton
action.
is a success, but we've not done what we needed to do
You're
to
right.
even go with this right here.
The limited things that have been done was obviously the palm tree sections you've done, those grants, and the Hampton Inn and a few other type developments. But I do think that the economy had a lot to do with that for the last number of years, and I think that situation has improved a lot. But it's going to require leadership on the part of the city to engage with these property owners and do it. I will say this, though. I keep getting it. People love our architecture in many ways. I hear comments about that. They like the design of the city. I hear from those visitors. I know, Mayor, you and I went out and met with the congressional aides, and they love the beauty. They talk about the beauty of the community. So I think we've got some really good things. Maybe we're our own worst critic because we're here and you see it every day.
We're not.
But there are people that have different views of the area outside the community. But out of the choices, if I've got to pick a place to live around Lake Okeechobee, this would be it. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind.
You know, I know that people, they come to visit it. It's all really nice, and everybody that goes on Lake Okeechobee, of course, realizes what a treasure we have. But the bottom line is that our per capita income has decreased. Our businesses have closed up on Highway 27. We have 60% of our workforce coming in from outside of Hendry County. Those are three issues that we have to solve a problem. We know we have a problem, and we got to solve it. And I don't believe that continuing to envision more and more and more until we fix what we have as a problem is going to get us to where we need to be. And I guess I'm just showing my frustration because we've been talking about this for a long time. And I I'd hope that we would have a goal and that we were going to follow it and to get it done, knowing that we have some major issues. We can't even attract another grocery store in town, you know?
I don't
and that
disagree.
And that to me is an issue, and it's because of the fact that the look of our highway. People are not going to come off Highway 27 and go and see. They might come for a visit, but that's a very one-day visit. That is not improving our per capita income. That is not improving people wanting to move to town.
No, it does have an impact on those business investments because the more heads they can count visiting and
we have tourism
interacting.
development dollars in a budget that's huge because we do have our hotels that are full. But to see that back into our community where families want to stay here and be here and work from here, that's not what we're seeing. And that's why I think that if we don't change the look of Highway 27, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to continue to spin our wheels for another 4 years.
Well,
And
I do think your points are well taken. I don't share the frustration because obviously I haven't lived it like some of you have very long.
And you don't probably need to. You need to be clear-minded.
Well, that's what I'm just telling you. I think we have assets that are underutilized and underappreciated. I do think that we've got our challenges, but I don't think the 27 quarter is unachievable. I honestly don't. I really believe if we get some synergy going and have a few successes, you will see that's contagious. I really believe that.
I try to see a silver lining on everything, and I think our biggest challenge is we don't realize that we probably including the Hampton now. The Hampton will probably bring over 200 people nightly to our now when we stay at a hotel anywhere, we've all stayed at hotels. When we go to the room and we put our luggage up, the next question we ask is where are we going to go? What are we going to do here? Where are we going to go eat? Maybe where are we going to take our kids to watch a movie, or are we going to go play games with them, or go watch a game? See, I think the Hampton and the Holiday Inn and the Best Western, and hopefully there's more interest and more hotels coming to our area, which I think hotels are good.
Yeah,
Attractive hotels are nice. I'm all for it. And they're bringing hundreds and hundreds of people to our town every day. But since we don't have anything for them to do, they're just getting up in the morning and riding out. So the challenge is as we develop the Hamptons, and we're talking about how we need to beautify around those new properties. So people, when I go to a hotel, I'll walk around and, see what's around there, and maybe there's an attraction I want to see. When we all stay. So long story short, the challenge is to continue with our partners. So I said earlier, we got to start developing these pieces on 27 that are vacant, and then we're going to do our part. We're going to do all the infrastructure. We're going to spend all the money that we got to spend to make it happen. But until we get those partners in, and we started, that Hampton is a big piece. If we can get more hotels to realize that, we have a nice golden piece of property here in Clewiston for them to bring their businesses, and then you can attract the Applebee's and the steakhouses and things like that. And that's how your community starts to grow. You got to start getting these big players to get interested in your city, because you can spend all the money you want, but if you don't have those partners, we're spinning wheels like we have for the last 20 years, which we've had a little growth.
The other part of that is still we're looking at transient from one end to the other, spend the night and leave. We lost the softball Dixie League softball tournaments they used to have. I don't know where they went. Where did they go to? There's a number of things that we had here in the city that people would come and would stay at least for the weekend. And when they were here, families who go up to the lake, about all we have anymore are the fishing tournaments. So it's not just developing the 27 corridor, it's the culture of the citizens need to be engaged too, and we need to have those opportunities for people to come and stay and be engaged and do things to happen also.
Yeah, and I think that's a good opportunity for us. Recreation tourism is something that we can benefit from that will impact on the 27 quarter. Again, don't put all our eggs in one basket, but there's no doubt in my mind that we're I really believe on the cusp of seeing enhanced interest, particularly if we have some announcements of a new investment into residential housing. That is our biggest albatross right now, in my opinion, is the shortage of housing opportunities to allow us to grow. That is really hurting us. It hurts us on a lot of fronts, and there's every indication that that's going to change soon. But until
This may be the last
To
thing I
get
say.
them-
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, to get them to come and stay for a little bit to see what we have, we've got to have those recreational opportunities for them to come and then know, once they're here, what we have to offer. I agree with how you planned this out. We do have to attack that 27 corridor, but I understand completely what you're saying. If you have the vision and the bones for those other plans, so that when we are enticing people to come, when we are asking people to come and redo those places on 27, fill up those empty storefronts or rebuild whatever it is. And we don't just stop there in our conversation when they see that you're far reaching and you have those goals that you want to go to. I think that's a smart idea. I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that.
well, it adds to the quality of life that people make their assessment on whether to come to a community. If you have a good quality of life environment and plan to improve it where you're not so great, I think it helps our case, our pitch, if you will, when we get ready to do it. So anyway, those are just thoughts. We can go.
Question
Yes,
about,
ma'am.
in your experience, what is the proper way to market the commercial development along 27? I recalled a conversation when you were first here that there were maybe opportunities that we could reach out to retail developers and say, come look at us, come see if you would fit here. Who does that traditionally? Is that local real estate agents that typically go out and seek that development? Is it the city itself that goes out and seeks that development? How does commercial development typically
I think that's a
come?
combination. Certainly, we welcome the input and actions of our local realtors, particularly commercial realtors in the region who have those contacts. But there are other ways to do it. I think the city has a role in that. I've been working very closely with the EDC office and gotten great response from their responsiveness to reach out to potentials that we hear from.
But that we hear from, but are they going out to solicit?
They are doing marketing efforts, going to these shows, if you will, and places and contacting these different businesses. And I could have Keitha come and give you an update on that at some point. Maybe that's a good idea of what she's been doing.
So
in some
what would be
Friday.
the number one reason that we're not seeing them come here?
I think right now it's just to be very honest, is we've been stagnant. Mm-hmm. And that's recognized to some degree, and they don't know which way we're going to go. If we see some announcements of investment and development, we've had very minimal amount of that, as you know, in recent years. I'm not talking about just in the commercial, but in the residential market. Other than refresh my name on the memory on the name. Orchard Park, and then the little bit of apartments that we had on WCO, and those are the only ones I'm aware of in the last several years, other than maybe an infill, a few infill here and there, but in the central and so forth. So there's been a few, but for a community this size, that's really low. I'll just be frank, the numbers are really low. And our population estimates reflect that. I think the 18 estimate, we're back up, 7,800 or something is their estimate. But that's almost minimal growth from the 2000 census, 2010, I'm sorry, the last census. Very minimal numbers. If we start issuing those permits, they start pulling permits, you see housing designs and the board approves a PUD arrangement that with a significant number of housing proposed, I think that is a big part of it, Mayor. Is I really think they are not sure which way we're going. Are we going to do like some of our neighbors and recede, or are we going to do like some others that have seen some commercial growth? But I do think that commercial growth follows houses. And if you don't have enough to support what's here, I think we qualify as a food desert in some respects because of the minimal number of options we have. I'm surprised that we don't have interest, and I know this will rub some people in the wrong way because it competes with smaller local businesses, but a Lowe's Home Improvement or Home Depot, we certainly are big enough to support those kind of stores, box stores. People see them as positives and negatives. They do create a lot of jobs. They're not high-paying jobs and so forth. But the other way is whatever happens with industrial development. If we can create jobs in private investment, that gives us more resources as a city to invest that money, that new revenue, and it creates jobs that bring people to this area. And I just heard the county numbers at the county commission meeting the other night of the number of housing starts in in our area, and then over in LaBelle area, the Port LaBelle. The Port LaBelle is getting the lion's share of the number of new housing starts in the county, from what I heard. I mean, they're in the 100 and some, and we're in the less than 50, and LaBelle's in a similar vein.
Available over there.
Sir?
Land is available there.
Exactly. And if the land availability
5,000.
doesn't allow for future development, and we have adequate available land, and the current owners have expressed an interest in allowing it to be developed. We're hearing that and getting very strong indicators. I had a meeting today on that, Travis and I did, and I think you're going to see a planned development for a portion of it, a revision of a previously approved plan. I'll go ahead and say it, on that property north of the railroad track, north of the golf course, in the very near term. We're going to see that. And 100 plus acres that could produce several hundred housing locations, different
Can you
types.
point that out on the clicker? Do you
Workforce
still have the
type,
clicker?
yeah, sure. Workforce type housing,
This area here.
that area. And
Extend down here, possibly.
that was previously approved by the
need a
city,
bay.
and then the economy tanked and a lot of other things happened. But we have every indicator that that's on the realm of announcement. And once we get a few announcements like that, I think that will benefit the EDC, our efforts staff-wise, to go back to the question that I veered away from of what can we do to help our cause. We have something to market then. You're going to have 400 new house tops or families. You're going to have that makes a difference that could be the difference between a food store decision making process. Maybe not in and of itself, but if that appears to be the direction we're heading, I honestly believe, I'm not just shooting you a line, I really believe that'll make it happen, because I've seen it happen in other communities, and you have too.
The thing is that I think Commissioner McGahey and the mayor mentioned too, that I usually use his blueprints of Sebring. I can remember Sebring going years ago when I used to go play. It was like us, one Burger King or maybe one Biff Burger, and the same 27 runs through Sebring that runs through Clewiston. 20,000 cars run through there every day.
Actually,
And
it's better here because we have 80 joining it. So we in South Bay are impacted at a much higher rate.
That's the question I always ask myself is why are those national chains not looking at our city? Are we not reaching out to them? Because I said the Burger King story, and I'm not going to say it again. When it opened the number one store. They didn't want to open a Burger King in Clewiston. I worked for them for years. They didn't want to open, and when they opened, it was a number one opening.
There's a busier McDonald's in the world. I don't know where it is.
That's what I'm
than this
saying.
one.
Why?
I mean,
why can't other businesses?
and I've seen that at late night and whatever. But that's a very good point. And what it amounts to is, and I heard this explained to me by one of the wireless companies that was looking at where they're going to put towers, and it made a whole lot of sense to me because I'm not a business background like some of you are, but they have X dollars in their annual development budget. That means they can build X number of stores, and they evaluate it on a sheet of paper who's got the most attractive option. It's not like everyone above a certain line is going to get a store this year. They're on the list. Yeah, they made the qualifier, but they're going to go down the list and do the highest performers working towards those others. And that's where we are. We're on the list because the volume, the numbers, the location, as Travis will point out in his thing, we have what we consider about a 13,000 population that just around the city and the city. So if you look at all those numbers, we certainly meet. I mean, that exceeds some of the things in our neighbor like Okeechobee. You see some of the investments made there lately. And so we're in that category, but there got to be these other criteria is the only thing I can figure. And somebody else is higher on the priority, and they're taking a wait and see attitude on places like Clewiston.
Go ahead.
I think also is those other places are buildable already.
Yeah.
They have the infrastructure. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have buildable lots for most of these chains. So
Well, that's where
they're
those
not gonna,
impediments
like
we
the
have.
Hampton,
Yeah.
and wait months and months and months and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars
Right.
to do it when they can go to Fort Myers or Palm Beach and build the same thing
Yeah.
and know they have
Even if
the
it costs some more, because their price point is much higher in some of those areas. We heard that the other day when the guy was telling us about how Wawa had put on one of the local builders that's building the Hampton. He was telling us that they had put on hold several of their plans in regional areas, and they were paying exorbitant prices for some of those locations, but they put them on hold for corporate reasons. I don't think that means they're not going to build them, but they just slowed down. But what was interesting is you're exactly right. It's the old shovel-ready concept for economic development. They're going to go where you're shovel-ready, and we're not quite shovel-ready, going to the mayor's point, with having these targeted things about alleys and things like that.
And Randy, you just
infrastructure.
mentioned about the wireless companies. Where do they go? Where it's most attractive option. Michael, you just mentioned about buildable lots, and this is what the Highway 27 corridor is all about. And that, to me, and until we get that done, we're not. And yes, there might be some housing announcements, but you have to remember that Okeechobee, it's one town and one county. So everybody's in one location basically.
True.
And so, and DeSoto's the same way. Arcadia's the same way.
Yeah.
Highlands County is because they have so much. I mean, they could grow.
Yeah, a lot of land, yeah.
Right. And so, and we know that the growth, we know we're talking about, we know it's coming, but still, the wireless companies where it's most attractive for them.
You're exactly
and
right.
buildable lots.
And the other
exactly
thing
right.
is we need to find those properties like Plattner's or the old Ford place. And if these guys will agree that they're ready to build and do something, is to fix that infrastructure and do away with the alley
Right.
where there are
And we could address
And
it.
when you do that, when you bring them to the table, you sell it that way. Look, we're willing to invest right here, which greatly increases the value of your property. If you'll commit, we'll commit. But we got to get that message.
Yeah,
to them.
and the problem right now with some of them is there's of a speculative nature. They think grandiose of what their property's worth. But what I don't think the city wants to put itself position that we put our resources into lot A, let's say, for example, and that owner just is going to jack his price even higher because all of a sudden he's got more property and it's all connected
I think the owners
without
have
some
to have-
agreement.
Right. They have to have some kind of they have to have a plan as
Yeah,
well.
got to have some agreement on how that happens.
I know that one of the gentlemen that was here, he left already, but he came before the commission and he said his goal was to tear down, because he's got some code enforcement issues that were brought to his attention, that he was ready to tear down the facility and rebuild a new one, but he couldn't do it without the alley being abandoned.
And that's the prime example that the city has some leverage to affect that deal. And we ought to take full advantage of that and do our part
Okay.
and
I think
still
that should be
protect
your
the city's
contact,
interest.
one of your contacts on your list.
Yeah, that's one of them on my
Okay.
list.
All right.
So I'm happy tonight that the mayor was the big bully, but I don't want you to be discouraged.
I'm not.
Because I'm usually the big bully.
I want to. I want to prove.
I want to strategize and,
Well, that's what this is about. That's what a work session and workshop
yes.
should be about. Is different opinions which help shape a plan.
Right.
And I'm getting very valuable input tonight that. Because obviously I don't make those final decisions. All I can do is recommend them. If y'all aren't bought into it early on,
But
it
we
ain't
need
going to happen.
boots on the ground, and
Well, we do.
That's what we can't be, and that's what.
But you know
have
a
to
lot
be.
of people, and you know influences, and you'd be surprised at how many people you might can point us in the right direction, particularly in some of your operations. You know what's a lot of people and what's going on. Now, what we also got to do is use our partners where we get help from the EDC and other agencies like that. But in the final analysis, DOT is a big help.
Yeah.
Our partners at the federal and state level with DEO, USDA, every acronym you can think of can be our help in this. And the key is having a board that's willing to be bold. That's the bottom line of my whole presentation is it's going to require us to be bold in some areas that may traditionally have been taboo. For example, I'm told that, just using that example of the end of the east end of town, that the commission, it came with a recommendation on the zoning that be commercial. At that time, maybe it was in active use as some industrial use, but there's no reason we want an industrial zone property with the worst of the worst sitting on the gateway to the town on the east. I don't care how it happened before, but when we recommend it this time, I hope this board will do the right thing and seriously look at it being commercial zoned, which will prohibit us falling back into that trap. For example, the Trevor Coast thing that they just put back here, that could have just as easily been setting up our own 27 for 2 years,
That is true.
zoning wise.
Thought about that.
And that's something that we need to fix. And,
When can we fix it?
as soon as we can go through the process of the zoning notifications.
I asked about the
and
P&Z meeting. When is that?
16th, is that
By
March?
zoning,
Yeah.
we're gonna do it on the 9th.
9th of March. And of course, we've invited the CRA group to attend that. And, but that is when we plan to have a next dialogue on the zoning ordinances and the changes. And Gary has gone through it and staff is reviewing it and reacting and will react
That
to
part of the
him.
Part of the Main Street corridor then, what Gary's done, that the
Yes.
P&Z's
It's
going
the 27th.
27
Call it the
quarter.
27 quarter.
okay.
Move it along.
Does it talk about zoning in that corridor?
That's exactly right. Travis
Okay.
Reese, Community Development Director.
And it speaks to things like some of these topics that we've identified as to redevelopment.
Commissioner McGahee, you asked a question about the difference in 27 corridor and downtown. It's a good question. Some people may not, you weren't on the board when we discussed those. Those goals were set for a comprehensive plan. The ordinance that's going to be before the Planning and Zoning Board on the 9th, that is looking at the ordinance and the ordinance that's going to be put in place before we rezone that property, the 27 corridor. Those ordinances, those are really as going to what this board is going to have to envision. What do you want 27 to look like? That's step one. And we talk about our goals are set. This commission has done it. You've set your goal. You have these spelled out and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we wish to do. The vehicle to get there is that ordinance on the 9th. Now, that's not going to be the final reading of that ordinance. It's just planning and zoning. We're looking at it. But that's the first, getting it out there, first draft, step one. Those are the rules. You're going to set your rules for what do you want it to look like, how do you want it to grow. Mr. Martin did great on pointing out Trevico. Great to have them here. They're sitting on Aztec where they should be. If they wanted to be sitting on 27 at the old machine shop, we would have to permit them there. It's allowable use, it's industrial. Now, it's not just that. Currently, today on 27, you have one commercial district. That commercial district's throughout Clewiston. There's no commercial 1, commercial 2. So your 27 corridor will be your first addition to a commercial district. If you wanted to build a Quonset hut, and I don't recommend that for anyone, if you wanted to build a little tin building right on 27 today, I would have to approve it. If it's less than an acre, it doesn't come before your planning and zoning board. It doesn't come before your commission. It comes before community development. If they meet the setbacks, they meet the use, it's going to get permitted and it's going to get built. So those are the things we talk about in vision. The goal is let's change the zoning. So step one is coming up on the 9th. We're going to change that. We're going to begin the process talking about changing those rules. And it's bold. To take that word from Mr. Martin, it's bold. It brings our planning and zoning board a lot more into the fold on development on that corridor. So we've got that idea. So to touch on that piece, that's the first one we're dealing with. And that corridor serves US 27. So that's more vehicular. People are coming there. They're usually bringing their car there. You get some transit or some pedestrian travel. But the downtown area, that's that little square, this little square in here that we haven't really discussed yet. It's just a little square there. It's from W.C. Owens over to Bond, to Dean Duff, down to Alvarez. We envision that to have maybe some residential use in there with commercial, walkability, kind of reverting back to encouraging kind of the Bond Street image that was put there, I don't know, the 50s maybe. You had some apartments upstairs, you had some
That
downstairs.
was actually in the 20s.
In
That
the-
was,
wow,
that was
yeah.
part of the John Nolan plan, yeah.
So
And that's
we
very
kinda-
common, Department of Revenue, Travis, but
Actually,
that's
they were
very
built probably
common
later,
for
but that was
downtown
part of the mixed use.
central business districts to have walkability and citizens who live there who will shop the shops
That's
and do
ridiculous.
things.
So this is the downtown.
Yes, the different, the little small square.
Okay.
So that was walkability. That was the idea. That's the goal for that was walkability. I know the two districts sound in their goals similar, but that was on purpose for the state through our comprehensive plan to not leave anything out. Now, we never intend residential use or any kind of residential mixed type use on a 27 corridor, but we left that language in there because we didn't want to handicap ourselves if that changed. I think from everything I've got from Mr. Martin and from the commissioners I've spoke to, we're not looking for apartments or mixed use there on that corridor. But it's still
Typically,
there
you
for
would have those on the streets, the next street over, or in
Or the
a central
downtown.
business district.
So there's our two different districts that we're working on. Then the Lake District, we'll get into that in just a second, but I'll recap a little bit of this, not to waste your time, but just I wanted to point that out. Everybody understood there was difference there. Right now, the lake is several different zoning districts. We may later come back with a recommendation for an overlay there to protect that area from development. And we'll say protect from development is really strategic. It's thinking about planning. And I'm going to point out our city plan. I love this little pointer here. You guys know I love whiteboards. I love planners. This area, I was in grade school when they started developing this over here, but we're glad to have it. Some 200, 250 homes. That's great. The Ridgeview 2. Not much planning went into that. Some did, because we could see that Ponce de Leon extends out, goes great, stops there, so that could extend on. A nice little layout. But one big piece that was missing as I inherited this position was Esperanza. That's 100-foot right-of-way. All right, that's the same width that you have going down 27 currently until it gets to around Lopez. So 100 foot, 100 foot. John Nolan laid it out perfectly. Unfortunately, it dead ends into a 40-foot right-of-way.
Where?
Right at the corner of the Little V Park. And it comes into Magnolia here. This is 40-foot.
That's the East Del Rio.
Yep.
By
Yeah, as it comes in,
East
it has to
Esperanza.
jump across the
East
canal. So you have a 40, 40, and a 40. So this could never extend out and go anywhere. We'd have to we'd have to take houses, eminent domain, build a bridge. So even though we were very happy, very pleased to get that, the planning really wasn't there. Not the long-term planning. The short-term planning was there. But we needed housing stock. We got it. It looks great. Cane fields went away. Houses went in. But wow, we really cut ourselves off. So we don't want to miss that opportunity again. We want to think long-term. Just something I thought I'd point out to you from a planning standpoint. It's very important. Think long-term. Short-term goal, 5, 7 years. Long-term goal, 10, 20, 30.
If I'm listening to you right, and I know we've written hundreds of ordinances since I've been here. God knows we got a lot of them, probably too many at times. You're saying, well, we have to concentrate and we have to decide, and staff has said, what don't we want to see on 27? So there's still some things on 27 that can be built that would kill any effort of what we're doing here.
And we've gone full circle. We started out, as the mayor pointed out, we had the plan, but the commission never adopted the enforcement tool that would have implemented some aspects of that plan.
Wow.
So that's one of the key things that needs to change if we're going to realize some elements of it. It's a lot more pieces to it, as we've discussed tonight.
So that's why the ordinance that Gary's prepared
Whatever.
with our input from what we've discussed and what we've had here.
And what
we
you
take
did
this
back in
discussion.
2016, yes. Sir.
And start tweaking it.
And that doesn't mean it
tweak some more.
can't be tweaked a good bit, but whatever reason it stopped and it didn't go to fruition. So we got to change that. Got to go to fruition on the parts that you can agree to, of elements of that ordinance going forward
Absolutely.
to have an effect.
Yep.
And it won't have an overnight effect. It will for some of these, because that will provide for some of the impediments being removed, like alleys and things like that will be addressed. I think they're addressed in there.
Absolutely. And there could be more that could be addressed in that, but even though it's bold, there's still things that probably need to be added to it. And it'll be difficult. It'll be difficult on this board. It's going to be difficult on all of us because it's a change. Anytime you change zoning, it is going to be difficult. I promise you, it's not an easy task. But that's, to me, is step one. Give us the ordinance. Once the ordinance is in place, then we start our rezone. We rezone those portions to match that future land use map that you have. And then we start the task of now you can only develop with that, and there will be some teeth in there that code enforcement can use, my department can use, and really trying to get a vision of what you want it to look like in the near term. I'll say a near term because we're talking once that's in place, there could be 2 to 5 to 7 year goals in there that will be achieved. And Commissioner Atkinson, you're absolutely right. These rooftops are going to be huge. So if we can get those back building, it's not just that, but you have to see construction going on. We have it in other parts of our county and other counties surrounding us. It'll come here.
Do you feel like tonight's a good time to give the presentation on the future for the lakefront area, or do you want to defer that? I know it's after 7.
Yeah, why don't we just focus on Highway 27 right now, and then
All right.
after the P&Z board and what's going on there.
Well,
And
I
it's
was going to
just-
suggest
let's just-
another session
Let's have another session and go from there with it.
and fill in the gaps
Yep.
of other things.
That
And
sounds
you're
good
going to
to
have
me.
to have that anyway on that ordinance stuff. And
Right, but so Travis, let's walk through this again. The Highway 27 corridor ordinance is going to go before the P&Z and the CRA Advisory Board on March the 9th.
March 9th,
Okay, and that meeting's going to be here at what time?
5:30.
5:30. And then that ordinance will come to the commission,
once a recommendation.
Right. If it makes it out of the ninth.
or the
if-
P&Z. It might be just several meetings that they
Yes.
have to have. Okay. All right, but the issue of zoning is not going to go through until after the ordinance is approved by the commission.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Then you'll
Can
be
those go
dealing
hand
with-
in hand?
Well, you really need the ordinance to say,
I guess you have public hearings and then you have
right,
to have
and we
time.
agree on the ordinance,
Okay.
then we come back and
Okay.
then we have the opportunity to zone them in as we
Okay.
see fit.
And if I could ask our city attorney, have you gone to sleep, Gary? Are you still with us?
Well, I'm listening to every word.
All right, I figured it. Well, thank you for the tolerating it. But at this point, I would like you to comment, if you'd like, on the draft that you prepare. If there's any overriding comments you'd like the commission to hear, just wanted to give you the opportunity since you've so patiently listened and given us the opportunity.
I still have.
Well, it imposes additional restrictions and opens up some additional opportunities for the 27 corridor. And the point I want to make there is that if you want the 27 corridor to continue to look exactly the way it looks today, leave all your ordinances the same. You're going to have to do something different on 27 if you're going to end up with a different result. And I think this ordinance might be the start of that.
Okay, thank you. Well, we realized several meetings back that we have a problem. We need to address it. So I think that we're all in agreement that we want it to be attractive and we want it to be buildable and we want to address some of the issues that have been brought up.
So we really have to dig into that ordinance.
Yes.
I mean, everyone has
Spend
to
a lot of
read it.
time.
Well, Kathy, can you do us a favor? Can you print the ordinance out for each of the commissioners and get it to us?
Yeah, because Gary sent you electronic, but we can
Right.
give you a hard copy.
I think
Yes.
that would be good.
Because you have to look at everything as it exists today in light of that ordinance, because if the hammer's going to drop somewhere, you got to be okay with that, because once we do that, it's done. And I mean, I didn't think about the Kwanzaa hut along or whatever that you mentioned, but would it be excluded under the new ordinance?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Just like
so
lime
it's
green
clear
tent
that
sheds on
that's
27.
not allowed.
It would require currently it would require all buildings on 27, substantial remodels, change of use, or, of course, new construction to come before a review board.
So,
That
and
can
when you say
fold.
review board, is that the P and Z board?
The P&Z board, yes.
Okay.
Yes, they
So
have to
I
vet
think
it
the
out.
other thing that is really important for us is to hear from that P and Z board
Right.
what their feelings are about everything, and are they on the same page as us as a board?
Good point.
Okay.
And Travis, I just want to clarify that I know we had the Sugarland Highway corridor and then the downtown district, but what's going before the P and Z there's nothing about the downtown district. Okay,
Yeah, we
so
can save that piece for later.
okay, all right, okay,
It and the lakefront.
all right.
Although there would be some mirroring of many of the elements once you've agreed on it on the corridor.
Okay. And, you know, I just saw this article and I've shared it with the city manager, and I laid copies here, and I think some in the audience that came early have a copy of it. But the most important thing, when we talk about saving rural communities, is cleaning it up. That's the number one task that has to be done. And again, as a fishing and farming town, we know the importance of all that. We have to have a strong hospital and a strong school system. And then we have to just make the plan and set it in motion. And so I think tonight we've come closer than we ever have been before, and putting it all together. And so and I look forward to reviewing the ordinance and having another workshop and continuing the discussion of what we have before us. Is there anything else? I know we've talked a lot up here, but the public is more than welcome to come forward and ask questions, please, because we are being live streamed, so we want to be able to have everybody hear what needs to be said.
Raymond Iglesias, Roland Martin's Marina. When you're talking about changing the ordinance, what happens to the existing businesses on the highway that the ordinance no longer fits your new ordinance?
This one is the old ordinance, saying that it has a date where they have to be into conformance.
I'll just search.
2020.
Some
It has
aspects.
to be determined, but
Some aspects of the
Signage could be one of them.
traditional non-conforming use status might apply to some things.
Do you think that's a positive or a negative?
It could come back to bite you
Oh, it's
because
certainly,
grandfathered in doesn't exist.
Right.
We had to tear down a piece of property for that reason.
it's a limited grandfather.
So you gotta
It's a
look
limited
at that.
If you want to change the way you look, you got to sometimes make some hard choices.
Yeah.
Just making sure you're
Yeah.
looking at that.
but we encourage you tonight that everybody, if you're interested, we will advertise it
Yeah.
again.
March 9th at 5:30.
5:30, yeah.
Jerry Cochran. I'm really encouraged by what I hear tonight. There seems to be some commitment from y'all to do what we've been talking about for years. And y'all gonna have to make some hard decisions. You're gonna run into a certain amount of people. My dad used to call them againers. It didn't make any difference what the issue was, they were again it. And you're gonna have people that, when you try and make these decisions, there's gonna be brush fires popping up. And you're
Jerry,
just
I'm
gonna,
sorry, what was that again? A what?
againers, against it.
That's a North Carolina
got it.
term.
Okay, all right.
That's a North Carolina
That's a
I haven't
hillbilly
heard it
term.
before, so.
That's a
Thank
hillbilly
you.
term.
Okay.
And y'all gonna have to, you're gonna have brush fires.
Right.
This one's opposed to this one, but you're gonna have to make those hard decisions. That's what leaders do. And that's what y'all expected to do, and I think I see some commitment to do that. And please keep in mind, all this stuff you're talking about, railroad depots and some of these other issues, they're all good ideas. You're not reinventing the wheel. It's all been done up and down the coast. We saw that 20, 30 years ago with train depots and some of the median issues. So you're not doing something that hadn't been done before. You just we're a little behind the curve getting it done. And the same old problem pops up about money. Great ideas, all cost money. You folks are going to have to get off your wallets. And you're going to have a certain amount of opposition to that too. But if you explain the issues, explain to the populace what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think you'll be amazed by the amount of support that you get. There's a lot of people in Clewiston that would like some changes. They would like us to move forward a little bit. And so I please urge you to keep that in mind. Mary, you mentioned about the 27 corridor. I think that really is our number one issue. And I think one of the best ways to address that is the city manager brought up that fifth lane. Get rid of it, put in some turn lanes, and put in some medians with some small trees and flowers. My previous residents did that with a lot of main thoroughfares. It really dressed up these busy streets. It had a traffic calming impact, and it wasn't that expensive to do. And I think that's a really good place to start because you've got the room there, and you get rid of these. What does the manager talk
Suicide
to?
possibilities.
Hopefully, we're headed in the right direction. I've heard. I don't have take exception to anything I heard tonight. It's just a matter of
Try to
prioritizing.
write that down.
Right. Yeah. And Jerry, I
I
know
only
you're
disagree with you folks about 5% of the time. So
I know you're on our P&Z board, so you're going to
Thank
have
you, Jerry.
your homework cut out for you as well. So we
unfortunately,
appreciate-
my wife reminded me tonight, you're going to be out of town for a week, you moron. So I'm not going to be able to
it might
make
not
that
just be
meeting.
over in one meeting though.
I'll catch up on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But please be encouraged. I think you're going to find a lot of support out here for what you're talking about. It's just a question of what do we do first.
Okay.
A lot of good ideas and not enough money. So that's the reason I said you're going to have to get off your wallet a little bit. And I know y'all don't like to do that, but sometimes it's just you got to prime the pump a little bit. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jerry. But he did bring up, he brought up a lot of points, and certainly a new word that I had never heard of. But the depot concept, can you continue to work on that and let us look at that as a commission? Because I think that's a great idea, and especially the steam engine. I think in it going for the the center of the community, I think is important. And I'd like for us to look at that plan, look at the options of it. From a historical perspective, I think it's important.
And I've shared that idea, nothing formal, with Representative from U.S. Sugar, and hopefully they'll pass it on and see if if it floats.
Well, I'd like for us to look at that. I think it's a great way to attract people here.
One thing that he mentioned, I might as well, if you got just a minute, I'd like to just seize on that Jerry mentioned is exactly right. The corridor changes infrastructure-wise. Much of it, and I'm talking about on the road, not the private properties. We've talked a lot about that and the investment it might take to redesign the utilities, things like that, close alleys, things of that nature. But the street itself, we're very fortunate and unfortunate at the same time that that's a highway responsibility of the state. They partner with communities, but I think they're going to be very receptive to putting into their funding scheme, which won't happen overnight. We know that. With this visioning plan concept, with their planning studio, I think the opportunities there that we will get them to embrace some of these ideas if we can get local support for them, because DOTs all over the place, when traffic volumes reach certain levels, they do plans, and they've had that in their making for 27 for a while, because they recognize the traffic volumes have exceeded what they are. I'm told that this route, and I haven't verified this yet, but I plan to with DOT, but I was told today that it has the highest volume of truck traffic based on the volume of traffic that it's designed for of anywhere in Florida. Think about that. Think about that.
I'd never heard that.
I heard that today. And if that's verifiable and if that's true, that's significant. And we need to play on that, because where should they invest their resources? In the highest needs. And I think that's one of the concepts we've been doing in other areas, and the highway will be one of them. They also have these aesthetic improvements and programs that we should take full advantage of.
Calming.
But we're going to have some infrastructure costs too. And Danny's put some numbers together. We can talk about them later on the street lighting. That wasn't mentioned, but to me, that is probably one of the more noticeable things that you'll see in this banner program that's fairly inexpensive. The lighting and the poles is the big money. But fortunately, we have our own utility. If we were dealing with a FP&L, it would blow our budgets, because they're going to make you pay for all the upgrades. But you being
Can we
the
make
community.
that a priority to see that presentation next
Sure.
meeting too,
Yeah,
with the lights?
we can have that. He's put some numbers together. I won't go into it, but it's not unaffordable, in my opinion, to do that. We might do it in pieces, maybe phases. We can discuss that. But that and the crosswalks,
Yeah.
things of that nature are real doable projects.
And I agree, Randy. I
affordable.
think the DOT, because it is such the traffic calming, because I know Haines City has done it. We see what another district has done in South Bay. Not that we're going to be like either one of them, but the street calming and, between the city and the DOT partnership, I think we could get some of this stuff done, in a short-term basis.
And these will help our efforts to market and work with these property owners, because if they see us doing something, whether it's our dime or the state's dime, doesn't really matter to them. It's enhancing the marketability and aesthetic appeal for their properties, and in some cases we might have to do some more strict code enforcement on some of the issues where somebody's not following suit. But anyway.
Okay.
Good
Was
session.
there another question? Did you have a question earlier? A public comment? I thought you were.
It was just that you have 40 or so parks in town. They can make a nice destination for any bikers who come out. If they can't get up to the lake, go out to one of your parks. If there's signs on how to find any of them, and they might spend an afternoon there. And if they were worked on, Romero over on Cowboy Way, he's always trying to make more family appealing that park over there.
Right.
And
That's
it's a
good
great
point.
attraction, and it encourages the idea of a community of neighbors, neighborhood.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
noted.
Chelsea, I know you were here with us tonight. I know you normally at our meetings, but I guess we'll see you again. Okay. All right. Yeah, I see that. So appreciate you being here with us tonight. Anything else? Okay. Appreciate everybody being here with us tonight, and our workshop is adjourned.
And we will announce the next session. We'll come up with a date for that.
I'm coming. All right.